Far out in the uncharted backwaters of the unfashionable end of the western spiral arm of the galaxy lies a small, unregarded yellow sun. Orbiting this at a distance of roughly 92 million miles is an utterly insignificant little blue-green planet whose ape-descended life forms are so amazingly primitive that two of them think doing a podcast called Digital Watches Are a Pretty Neat Idea is a pretty neat idea. They are Jeff and Brian. Hello, this is Jeff. I'm with my friend Brian, and this is our Halloween bonus episode.
Hey, Jeff, how are you?
I'm doing great, Brian. How are you?
Well, Jeff, my thumbs are pricking.
Your thumbs are pricking?
Yes, I can tell by the pricking of my thumbs that something wicked this way comes.
Okay, yeah.
But actually, it's not wicked. But it is the season.
It is the season. It is almost Halloween.
That's right. That's right. And we're going to talk about someone you have introduced me to from the online world.
Yes, something that I just stumbled upon. The terms adorable and charming are not two words I would have ever thought that I would use to describe Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy until recently.
Yes. That's true.
I stumbled across a YouTube video by a young girl named Athena Phan, who is doing an animated audiobook of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Right. And then you shared that with me, and we both got a great deal of enjoyment out of listening to Athena read the book.
We most certainly did. The way I discovered it, I was in one of the Hitchhikers forums on Reddit, or one of the Hitchhikers subreddits, I guess is the way you would say it.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a post for a YouTube link that was an animated Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy audiobook.
Right.
And I ignored it. I just forgot about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then days later, I'm like, oh, I should look that up and see what that's all about.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of going to Reddit and trying to find that original post and clicking that link, I just went to YouTube and typed animated Hitchhiker's audiobook. I found two different users that had the same thing.
Yep.
I did not click on the one from Reddit.
Right.
What that one was, it looked like they took still shots from the movie and they ran the book through a text-to-speech synthesizer. It's really kind of weird.
Yep.
Instead, I clicked on this one by Athena Phan, and it has to be one of my favorite things I've ever just accidentally stumbled on.
It is absolutely amazingly delightful.
Yes, amazingly delightful is a great way to explain that. Now, I could not believe this existed. I was asking myself, why would a teenage girl read and animate The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy on YouTube? It just, I couldn't even fathom why this even existed.
Right. Now, do you remember when we looked up that information, when she recorded this, or how long ago it was recorded?
She recorded these over a year ago, and unfortunately, she only recorded the first 6 chapters.
Yes.
And then she never, ever continued.
Mm-hmm.
I did my best to try to contact her. Basically, I left a message on one of her comments of her videos because she is so young. She doesn't have email links or ability to direct message her through any of the ways I found, and it just seemed a little weird, me tracking down some teenage girl. I'm like,
yes, I remember.
I'll put this out there, And if she accidentally sees this comment and contacts me, wonderful.
Right,
but
right. I remember the conversations we had about how awkward it was, but we were delighted by what we heard, and we were sincerely interested in speaking with her. But we couldn't figure out any way to do that without seeming like two creepy old men.
Well, creepier than we already are.
That's right. That's right.
One of the things that makes this completely charming is that she just goes for it. She picks up the book and she starts reading, and she doesn't read and reread and edit this to death so it's a perfect recording. If she stumbles or mispronounces something, that was in the past, and she's just going on ahead.
Right. And well, to that end, it reminds me of a story. Well, it reminds me of a personal life story, really. When I was younger, I wasn't a very good reader. I mean, I got to third or fourth grade, and I was pretty far behind in my reading skills. And it's interesting why that happened. I mean, I moved a lot when I was young, and I was in one school where we were taught a phonetic style of reading, where we were encouraged to sound the words out as we read them, so that we could become familiar with the text and actually develop an understanding of the word itself. But we were actually taught to read out loud. Okay. And that was when I was, second or third grade or somewhere in there. And then we moved to a new house in North Jersey, and I went to a new school. And I got to that school, and the teachers started complaining that I was annoying all the other students and talking too much, and when I spoke when I read, and that was not appropriate for a school setting. And yeah, it was really interesting. And then on top of that, they thought that I had a problem with reading, so they sent me to a reading specialist in the school back in, again, this is second, third grade. And that specialist literally took a pencil, put it in my mouth, and then told me to read. So that my
didn't tell you to write.
No. I mean, they're basically keeping my mouth closed while I was reading. So that, that set me back so far in my whole, ability to read and my whole desire to read, that it wasn't until I got to, like I said, the fourth or fifth grade, I can't even remember. And at that point, I finally met a teacher who understood that the exploration in reading is important, and that letting a child or letting an individual read whatever they want just to get them started is really a key. And when I listened to Athena, and trust me, you and I agonized about this a little bit, because we don't want to appear like we're making fun of her, because we really are not. No. We really feel passionately that the desire for a young person to read this material, it's an interesting motivation. We want to know why she was motivated to read this. And then we really want to talk to her about her choices, about the style in which she chose to read it, because it's brilliant in its own way. And we want to understand how she conceived of it.
Right. It's almost like she was practicing, but she decided to release it. It's this weird combination of, I'm going to experiment with different vocal styles and different accents and different caricatures, and I'm going to go from reading to performing, trying to get it all under control. I don't even know what I want to say or how I want to say it. She's just trying to find a way to perform. Mm-hmm. And she's like, well, I might as well release it. And I want to know mostly why she stopped.
Yeah, that would be interesting. But I do want to bring up something that we've discussed before when we talked about Adams and the original radio show.
Yes.
We've had the discussion where he intentionally created words or character names or alien race names that were confusing and difficult to say and to write out onto the page. That was one of the things that he sort of enjoyed doing.
Yes.
And it's such an interesting choice that she decided to read this particular book. And again, I'd love to know the motivation for why she chose to read it.
Well, yeah, we were just talking about how writing notes is difficult.
Oh gosh, yes.
His word choices, even his regular words, not even his made up names or alien races, but his word choices and his word order they don't roll off the tongue.
No, they don't. They do not.
It is so it was a tall order to just read this book straight, right off the page, right into a mic, right onto YouTube, right into my radio.
Yep.
Because Douglas just makes up these words and makes up these names, you don't necessarily have anything to draw from. And when you're reading to yourself, it doesn't matter what the word is or how the word is pronounced. You're going to designate something for that word.
That's right.
And when you're reading, you just put that designation and it doesn't make any difference. When you're reading it aloud, however, now all of a sudden it makes a difference what word you used. We're going to go to Ford Prefect. I mentioned that it wasn't until I listened to the LP that I heard Prefect. In my head, when I was reading the book, I did Perfect. She does sort of a name like Perfect. She does a Perfect, and then she does Prefect. So she doesn't ever get Prefect, but she does some kind of a different version. When I was in grade school, we had to read a book called Dinner at the Homesick Restaurant. In it, there was a character that had a name I was totally unfamiliar with.
Okay.
Like I said, because I was reading, I could just attach anything I wanted to that name. And I attached Phobe. And then the day came when we were discussing the book in class, and the teacher asked something about the character Phoebe. And I'm like, Phoebe! Yo.
That's who that Phobe was, huh?
The name Phoebe is a name I was familiar with, but had never seen it written on a page.
There you go.
So when I see Phoebe, I had no idea what it was. So I just said Phobe in my head. It also reminds me of the first time I was driving in Southern California and I saw a sign for La Jolla. And I'm like, Jolla? What's La Jolla? Oh, it's La Jolla. So the first time you see something like that,
right,
it takes you back a little bit.
It does. The reason I brought up my story earlier is that she really does attack her reading in a phonetic way. Yes. All of the words that are difficult to pronounce or difficult for her to read, she uses a very phonetic approach to it, and it does add some humor to the story, but we're not poking fun at her at all, because these are difficult. It's a difficult subject. It's a difficult book to read.
Yes. Therefore, adorable and charming is what we find all of these mistakes.
Yes.
Adorable and charming. Not ridiculous, not funny. It's adorable and charming. Maybe, yeah.
Right. Well, you already started talking about Ford Prefect or Perfect,
yes,
or Perfect as she says, but she, of course, when she first introduces the wholly remarkable book, she uses Wolly, the Wolly remarkable,
yes.
And she does that many times throughout the reading. She uses Wolly instead of holy. But when you look at the word, that's the way it's spelled.
It's the way it's spelled. There is no other word spelled that way that's pronounced that way. I'll take a couple of examples that I wrote down.
Mm-hmm.
Would be holy, not like holy as in spiritual, but holy as in full of holes.
Right.
Holey.
Right.
Because the word is whole, just add a W. But no, that's you can't. There's that double L.
Yes.
There's no idea why they put the double L in that word, and I think she's the actual correct one, and the rest of the world is
We've got it all messed up. Yep.
Yes. Also, when you're reading, depending on the size of the type and the clarity of the type,
Mm-hmm.
there are times that there are letters like an R and an N
Mm-hmm.
that can look like an M,
Mm-hmm.
or the M can look like an R and an N, and
Yes.
if you're just reading. So one of the ones that I liked, because what I found fascinating is that when she reads it, you can actually tell that she knows it's incorrect, but she doesn't stop to try to figure out what it is. Like I said, that was in the past. we're going on.
Yes, we're getting through it.
Yeah, when he was talking about El Prosser and his relation to Genghis Khan and his Mongoloid heritage,
Mm-hmm.
he talks about his stoutness about the tum.
Mm-hmm.
And she uses the word snoutness, where I'm not quite sure where snoutness came from, but she says about the turn. A snoutness about the turn. And so I'm figuring she's got a pretty bad copy where the R and or the M looked like an R and an M with a little bit of a break in that letter.
Right.
But
Right.
it's one of those things that we've read this book and we've heard this book read and we know what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And when we hear something different, it was fantastic.
Right,
It was absolutely fantastic.
Right. So it's around this time when they're talking with Prosser that Prosser continually comes up to Arthur with a new tact at trying to get him
Yes.
to get out of the mud. And Adams uses the word cajoleries.
Right.
And I just love the way she's said cajoleries.
Cajoleries.
Cajoleries. And if you're not familiar with the word, which I mean, who is? It's not a common word, you know.
It's not a grade school word.
No, absolutely not. And like you said, I think she's a young lady in her teens, if we're guessing right.
Yes, that'd be my guess.
Mm-hmm. So it's also during this exchange where Ford walks up to Prosser and says, "Take it as read that this is what's going to continue to happen for the rest of the day." And
Right.
this is where she actually says, "Take it as read."
Yes.
Under that situation, the context is difficult for her to have assumed "take it as
Yes.
read" is what was meant.
Yeah, the same word, exact spelling, two different pronunciations. Only know which one to use by context, like
Right.
you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
And she has none.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll get to this giant star. And come on, how many of you would pronounce Beetlejuice correctly
Right.
if you've never heard it spoken before or
Mm-mm.
never seen it written on a page?
Mm-mm.
So she does a couple of different versions. She
Right.
does eventually get it correct at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But my favorite of her mispronunciations is Beltagees.
And you know what?
Santraginean.
Yep.
Santraginean isn't even fair.
Santraginous, Santraginous
Yeah.
or Santraginian.
Right.
Yeah, but what makes it funny is she says V instead of 5.
Yes.
You know.
Santraginous V.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
Then when they're in the bar and Ford is ordering beers, he orders pints of beer.
Mm-hmm.
But she says pints. Because how is a 13-year-old girl or whatever going to know that you order beer in pints?
Oh, especially if she's not from England, which I think we thought she was from Texas. Is that right?
I can't remember. But maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember. I did a lot of back and forth and I don't remember. I quit looking a long time ago.
Yeah, I gotcha. But she also, at one point when they're talking about arithmetic, she says arithmetic.
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 Yes. Mental arithmetic.
Yes.
Instead of arithmetic.
Uh-huh. But again, not trying to poke fun here. We just really appreciate that she made an effort. And as I said, every time she does
Absolutely.
make an effort, it's a phonetic reading of the word.
Yes, yes. So this book is divided up into 3 basic voices. There's narration, there's dialogue, and then there's the guide. And it can be difficult to distinguish between them in a straight read.
Right.
So she's not doing a straight read. She tries to do different voices for the dialogue.
And I applaud her greatly for that. I mean,
yes.
if she had been doing it for some unknown reason, like it was a school assignment or something, she might not have made any such effort, you know? She just would have read it straight off. But she makes a concerted effort of making the characters have their own voice.
Right, right. So chapter 2 starts out with both the Encyclopedia Galactica and the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and what they have to say about alcohol. And during this part of the read, she put background music behind the words.
Oh, it is so fantastic.
What's more is that it was still easy to hear her clearly.
Uh-huh.
She did not overpower the music so you couldn't hear herself.
Nope.
And I thought that was a brilliant editorial choice and was extremely impressed.
I was too. I really love that choice. And she does, we've talked about it before. That's one of my favorite described scenes in the book is the making of the Pan-Galactic Gargle Blaster.
In the first 3 chapters, she sounds like she can be from anywhere USA.
Mm-hmm.
In chapter 4, at the beginning and the end, she starts playing around with a British accent.
Right.
And in chapters 5 and 6, she goes totally British.
I know, it's amazing. And we were talking about Prosser. She chooses Prosser has a distinct southern drawl when she does him. You know? And Ford, she tries to do a little bit of an accent with too.
Right.
And she leaves Arthur to her primary voice.
Right, yeah.
The transition to the English is wonderful.
Right, absolutely. Even though I have read the book myself and I've listened to it read by Douglas Adams, I have ingrained in my head what I believe is the way it is supposed to be. The downside is that it is difficult to imagine any other interpretations.
Mm-hmm.
And I was overjoyed to hear parts of the book interpreted in a way that was totally unexpected. In a way, it was kind of like hearing the book for the first time.
Yes.
So what I want to do is I want to play some of our favorite parts of the book that just surprised us and brought us much joy.
So you're going to break your own rule again, huh?
I am going to break my own rule again.
Yeah, I mean, last time we played those bespoke versions of Silence.
Yes.
And now we're going to actually use other clips.
We're going to use other clips. Stolen from a 13-year-old girl's YouTube channel.
Oh, gosh. But it's the only way people will really appreciate the depth of this story here.
Yes. I'm going to start out with Arthur is very upset at the lengths he had to go and the hoops he had to jump through to find the notice of demolition for his house. In what I imagine is an exasperated way, he complains about what he went through to L. Prosser. About there being no lights and no stairs and that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then she gets to the sign on the door of the disused lavatory, and the way she reads it, I have to remember this is dialogue. This isn't, there's no narration here. So this is her interpretation of how Arthur says the sign on the door of the disused lavatory.
Beware of the leopard.
So to hear the change to this scary voice made me smile. So again, here's another one of those dialogue things that kind of jumped out at me and made me smile. So Ford is stuck on Earth for 15 years and was being described as oddly distracted, and he would continually look up into the sky. When he was asked what he was looking for, he would say, flying saucers. When he was asked what kind of flying saucers, he would say,
Green ones, he would reply with a wicked grin.
And never in my life would I have expected Ford to say green ones like that.
Oh, gosh. And then, of course, we've already talked a little bit about this, but we can hear now where the exchange between Arthur and Prosser
Yes.
goes.
You were talking before about Prosser and his cajoleries that he was using to get Arthur to get out of the way of the bulldozers. And when she reads these, her inflection makes me believe that she doesn't understand what is being said. She reads all the words correctly and in the right order, but the way it is read, you don't quite understand what she means. And here's what I'm talking about.
It was Mr. Prosser's accepted role to tackle Arthur with a good occasional new ploy such as For the Good Talk, or the March of the Progress Talk, or the Knocked My House Down Once, Never Look Back Talk, and various other cajoleries.
A little bit later, the book goes on to talk about Ford and the drinking game that he used to play to lose. In her description of that game, she's reading it pretty straight, and she actually sounds a little bit bored.
Each of the two contestants would then concentrate their will onto the bottle and attempt to tip it, and pour spirit into the glass of its opponent, who would then have to drink it. The bottle would then be refilled. The game would be played again and again. Once you start to lose, you would probably keep losing, because one of the effects of drank spirit is to depress telephysic power. Soon as the predetermined quantity has been consumed, the final loser will have to perform a forfeit, which was usually obscenely biological. For perfect, usually played to lose.
All of a sudden, her style of reading changes for one sentence, and then it goes right back to being bored again.
And of course, it's the inflections and the emphasis that I really enjoy in a lot of these cases. And here's an example of where she just dives right into it as she says,
Ford looked across to Mr. Prosser, and suddenly a wicked thought struck him.
and I just love the way she really dives into that.
Yes, absolutely.
And again, another great example of her inflection and her commitment to the material. I love when she describes the conversation between Prosser and Ford about switching positions and having Prosser lay down in the mud.
Yes, that was great.
You want me, said Prosser, spelling out his new thought to himself, to come and lie there? Yes. In front of the bulldozer? Yes. Instead of Mr. Dant? Yes. In the mud? In, as you say, the mud.
I know we mentioned this earlier, but I think it just bears repeating here. If we can have her describe to us the creation of the Gargle Blaster.
Take the juice from one bottle of Old Jank Spirit, it says. Pour into it 1 measure of water from the seas of Santraginus, oh, that Santracanian seawater, it says. Oh, those Santraganian fish. Allow 3 cubes of Acturin Megagin to melt into the mixture. It must be properly iced or the benzine is lost. Allow 4 liters of Phalline marsh gas to bubble through it. In memory of all those happy hikers who have died of pleasure in the marshes of Thalia, over the back of a silver spoon floats a measure of prolactin, hypermint extract, redolent of all the heady odors of the dark lactin zone, subtle, sweet, and mystic. Drop in the tooth of an Algolian sun tiger. Watch it dissolve, spreading the fires of Algolian sun deep into the heart of the drink. Sprinkle Xanthor and add an olive. Drink, but very carefully. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy sells rather better than the Encyclopedia Galactica.
Yeah, she did that great. However, nobody will say sprinkle Xanthor better than you did.
And sprinkle Xanthor. That is my favorite accented line. And again, I just want to make sure everybody out there knows we're not trying to poke fun at this young lady, but no. I absolutely love this little mispronunciation here where she's talking about the uses of a towel.
Right.
You can wrap it around you for warmth as you bound across the cold moons of Jaglan Beta. You can lie on it, the brilliant marble-sanded beaches of Santraginus V, inhaling the heady sea vapors. You can sleep under it beneath the stars which shine so redly on the desert world of Takrafoon. Use it to sail a mine raft down the slow, heavy river Moth. Wet it for use in hand-to-hand combat. Wrap it around your head to ward off noxious fumes. Or avoid the gaze of the ravenous budblatter, beast of trawl, a mind-bottingly stupid animal. It assumes that if you can't see it, it can't see you. Daft as a brush, but very, very ravenous. You can wave your towel in emergencies as a distress signal, and of course dry yourself off with it if it seems still clean enough. More importantly, a towel has immense psychological value. For some reason, if a stag meaning non-hitchhiker, discovers that a hitchhiker has his towel with him, he will automatically assume that he is also in possession of a toothbrush, washcloth, soap, tin of biscuits, a flask, compass, map, ball of string, gnat spray, wet weather gear, and a spacesuit, etc.
I just love the way she says gnat spray.
Right. And I like how this started out as a straight read. And then in the middle of it, I think it dawned on her that this was like a reading out of the guide and kind of like a commercial. And then it started to get real fancy with a whole bunch of vocal embellishments. And speaking of vocal embellishments, I just like the way she says this.
Hey, you says that who be Ford Prefect? There's a Frood who really knows where his tail is.
This made me smile and laugh.
All right, so she's making some wonderful additions by creating a mood and by adding music into certain parts. But my favorite sound effect is this sound effect.
With a bang, drove your ears 6 feet into your skull.
I have to tell you, every time I heard it, I jumped out of my skin.
Absolutely. The book says a bang that drove your ears 6 feet into your skull. And it drove my ears 6 feet into my skull the first time I heard it. And I was in the car driving. There's nothing worse than being startled behind the wheel of a moving vehicle. So kudos to her for that.
Mm-hmm.
In the episode about the book, I explained how much I liked the verbal description of the destruction of Earth.
There was a terrible, ghastly silence. There was a terrible, ghastly noise. There was a terrible, ghastly science.
Her reading of it makes me believe that she has the same appreciation for this passage that I had.
I agree.
So this one is narration more than dialogue, and so it's okay to put things in, but I don't know how Zaphod actually would feel, or if he would feel the same way that she seems to be explaining it. But he's about to steal the heart of gold, and there's a lot of passages stating that today is the day in regards to unveiling of the heart of gold, and him becoming president of the galaxy, and the reasons he became president of the galaxy, and everybody finally realizing what he has been up to. Well, all of that seems like small potatoes when you hear her read that coincidentally,
Today was also his 200th birthday.
never in a million years would I have imagined that's how that would be read.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, a teenager and their birthday, who could not be excited about their birthday?
And imagine the 200th.
Awesome.
More dialogue that she read that was read in a way that I would have never expected is that when they were first brought on the Vogon ship and not really knowing what part of the ship they are in, Ford is using a lit match to see what little he can. So in my head, he's trying to be very quiet and not attract attention to himself or both of them, because Arthur's there as well. And then he hears a slight groan and he sees a heavy shape moving on the floor, which obviously is Arthur waking up after the matter transference beam. And he shakes out the match, so now it is completely dark. He reaches into his pocket, he pulls out a packet, he rips it open and says,
I brought some peanuts.
Never would I have imagined again, and I'm going to say this over and over, because this is what this whole thing is. Never would I have imagined Fort Prefect would talk about bringing peanuts like that. One of the things that I found fascinating about her reading of this book is, I don't know if she found it funny, because she either never laughed or edited out all of the parts where she did laugh. We talked about when I read the book the first time, made me laugh out loud while reading the book.
Right.
And so here she is reading this book, and she's reading these ridiculous things, and she's not laughing. And so then I don't even know if she likes the book. So my absolute favorite part of this whole thing is when she was reading the passage about Ford's theories on why humans always continually state the obvious. When she reads how he abandoned his last theory in favor of a new one, she reads,
At first, Ford had formed a theory to account for this strange behavior. If human beings don't keep exercising their lips, he thought, their mouths probably seize up. After a few months of consideration and observation, he abandoned this theory in favor of a new one. If they don't keep on exercising their lips, he thought, their brains start working.
I think she actually laughed for real at the end of that passage.
I think she actually did. I love it.
So I am glad that I heard her laugh at this book, because it was really kind of bothering me.
Oh, but you can tell that she enjoys what she's doing, even if she's not laughing out loud.
One of the things that I found hysterical is how she's bringing, I don't know what I'll call, her real life experiences into the interpretations of a scene. So Ford is showing Arthur how to use the guide.
You press this button here, you see, and then the screen lights up, gives you the index.
To me, it sounds like Ford is explaining to a grandparent how to use their phone.
Here she is describing the effects and the way life changes when you have a babelfish in your ear.
Should have a good time.
When you know the book and you've heard it read and you've read it yourself, you know what's coming. And as this scene is coming up, I'm going, I can't wait to hear. And that's what we got to hear. It was brilliant.
Glorious.
So as she's doing the whole 6 chapters, she's made some strange editing and censorship choices. Well, first, she did not read any passages that were contained in parentheses or any of the footnotes.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no surprise there.
Right.
However, we don't get to hear her read, or maybe she would have sung, the Old Jank Spirit Orion mining song. That was not in there because it was in a footnote or something or in parentheses.
Right.
We do not learn the definitions of sass, hoopy, and frood.
Right.
Those were in the footnotes.
Mm-hmm.
About swearing, she says the word hell 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
First, in the discussion about people traveling between points A, B, and C, she reads, work out where the hell they wanted to be. So she kept that one.
Right.
Next, in the pub, she reads when Arthur asks Ford, would you please tell me what the hell is going on?
Mm-hmm.
She kept that one. Next, in the pub, when Arthur's house is being knocked down, she reads when Arthur asks, what the hell am I doing in the pub, Ford? So she kept that one in.
Right.
After that, all of a sudden, I don't know if her parents got on her case from listening to these, but she started changing words.
Oh, yeah?
When Ford told Arthur to let the workmen tearing down his house have their fun,
Mm-hmm.
Arthur waved a nearly empty beer glass in the bar and said, damn their fun. But she changed it to shut their fun.
Mm-hmm.
After running out of the pub and yelling at the workmen, Arthur falls to the ground, points at the sky, and says, what the hell's that? But she changed it to, what on planet Earth is that? So, hell all of a sudden isn't a word she was going to say. After she read what the guide had to say about the Vogons, and Arthur said that he wished he had a daughter so she could forbid her from marrying one, Ford told him they have as much sex appeal as a road accident. She changed it to, they have as much, long pause as she makes an editing decision, looks as a road accident.
Oh, I love it.
So I was surprised that when Arthur could not find the entry for the Earth in the guide, and Ford pointed to where it was, she still read, above Eccentrica Golumbus, the triple-breasted whore of Eroticon 6. So I thought for sure that was going to be taken out. And then I think there is one more hell at the end of the book. But again, it was just funny hearing her change some of the words so she didn't have to swear on YouTube.
There you go. Could have been censored.
Right. So I did describe this as an animated audiobook, and it is on YouTube, and there is some animation. There's shapes and still pictures and clip art, and it seems mostly there so the viewer has something to look at.
Mm-hmm.
There's no real purpose, but putting it together is good practice, and it's a learning skill that might come in handy later for her.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't continue through all 6 chapters.
Right.
About a third of the way through chapter 3, this message appears on the screen. It says, I am sorry for the inconvenience. So that makes me think she read all the way through So Long and Thanks for All the Fish.
Uh-huh.
But I am no longer adding edits every few seconds. This is because it is not useful for those that do not look at the screen. It's a video. And if at this point you thought, hey, I'm looking at the screen, what about me? It goes on to say, if you would like to argue, talk to the comment section. And then there was just a still picture for the rest of the videos.
Fantastic.
So one of my big disappointments is that we were not able to get in touch with her and we're not able to ask her any questions. But I am going to throw out into the ether some of the questions that I had that I would have liked to ask her. So did you have any questions on the top of your head? Did you write any down?
I didn't actually write any down, but I could come up with some off the top of my head.
Well, the first one is just basically, why did you decide to make YouTube videos of audiobooks in general? The Hitchhiker's Guide isn't the only book that she does. She's got Alice in Wonderland, and she's got a couple of other books on her YouTube channel. What started that whole thing? That's something I would like to know.
Right, and it's a really good question because, as we've discussed, The Hitchhiker's Guide it's quite a complicated book. And I would ask her a similar question in that I would want to know what her inspiration was.
Yes.
For that particular book.
Yes. Why did you choose The Hitchhikers of all of the books? But this reminds me of the job that we used to have. We used to have volunteers sitting at a table, helping us by checking people in.
Right.
And during downtime, you could sit at the table and chat with your volunteers. One of our accounts had 2 8th grade students sitting at the table checking people in.
Oh, never experienced that.
And I was sitting there and just waiting for the next customers to walk in and listening to their conversation. And they were talking about this book report that they had to do and how much they hated the book that they were reading.
Uh-oh.
So I said, well, what books do you like to read? And this 8th grade girl said, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And I almost fell off my chair.
Oh,
how do you know about The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? Oh, it's my dad's favorite book. So it's nice to see generations passing down and then for her to actually enjoy it.
Right, right. And I really do think that based on her reading of it, that she did, in fact, enjoy the book. And we have made comments that it seems like she's doing a cold reading. But I wonder, and as you pointed out in the in the video animation, if she hadn't already read many of the stories or many of the books and then chose to read this one.
Right. I'd also like to know if she laughed more than that one time I think we caught her laughing in chapter 5.
Yeah, that's a good point. At one point, when I think it's in the second chapter or something, that she sounds like she's actually recording into an audio cassette player.
Yes, the audio quality does fluctuate, and that chapter 2 all of a sudden gets very tinny.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I guess the most important question that I had, and I think I already know the answer, but is there any hope of getting any more chapters?
Oh, gosh. Yes, the flights of fancy of young ladies might change as they age.
Yes. Yeah. She's done with this. Over.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, it would have been a glorious conversation if we could have been able to spend some time with her. And I'm sure we would have had other questions that could have delved into the mindset.
Yes, it's not too late if somehow, some way, somebody out there hears this, knows her, or she finds out about it. I would do a whole bonus episode interview with Athena Phan. No charge.
No charge. Oh, I have to check with the sponsors of our program to see if they'd accept it.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Well, Jeff, we finally reached the end, so I think it's time to say goodbye, Jeff.
All right, Brian, I will say goodbye to everybody, and I will also say go to YouTube and search for the animated Hitchhiker's Guide audiobook and find the one that is read by Athena Phan and watch and listen to it. You won't regret it.
You will not. Athena, if you're out there, just know we're one of your fans.
Yes.
A good pun to end everything.
Oh, I didn't even get it. Thank you. Thank you
Good night.
for pointing it out. Thank you for listening to Digital Watches Are a Pretty Neat Idea. Look for us the first Thursday of every month for a full episode. We will also release a bonus episode later in the month. A very special thanks goes out to Luke, Max, Greg, and Tim Lesnick for arranging and performing our opening theme. We would also like to thank our talented friends and family for their voice work on our introductions and commercials. Visit our website at digitalwatchesareaprettynneatidea.buzzsprout.com, where you can find links to all my Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy inspired t-shirt designs. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube as Digital Watches Are a Pretty Neat Idea, on Instagram as Watches Idea Podcast, and on Twitter at Watches Idea. If you'd like to contact us, our email is digitalwatchespodcast@gmail.com.
This has been a Froods for Thought production.